pivoting to our next story, kind of, this is partly why our next story actually has the title that it has. It's because we're going to be covering Microsoft stock dropping 10%. In large part due to AI. When they were just cloud-based, here is a way to use the cloud, store stuff on the cloud, manage things in various areas through the cloud. They were line go up. They were, every quarter you couldn't stop them. But now that they've pivoted to AI, the line's been a little bit more rocky. Investors are concerned about the scale of Microsoft's AI-related capital expenditures. They also feel like AI hype is cooling and revenue gains have not yet matched the level of spending. Google's renewed momentum with Gemini. Again, Microsoft has famously touted, we wanted to make Google dance. Well, now Google's tap dancing all over their back, and they may have, it's one of those be careful what you wish for situations. Now that you've awakened the dragon, they are running off with it, and it's making competitive pressure for Microsoft because, again, they're dependent on OpenAI and how fast OpenAI can produce things to keep up with Google. And while Microsoft, churning money like coal into a steam engine, OpenAI can only do so much at the scale that it's at versus Google, which has, we mentioned earlier, all of mobile and all of desktop mostly, and all of IoT in order to make its language models faster, more efficient. It has the entire internet to gobble that up, and now it has the entire marketing aspect for the internet with Google Ads and things like that. So it's going to be hard for other companies to end around Google. And the last thing is that Azure continues to grow, but margins are tightening due to infrastructure costs. Again, when you are using a lot of your cloud in order to power AI, you're pushing out some of the stuff that other people need the cloud for, and everyone else is kind of doing soup. So now your prices, because everyone's offering a very similar service, are now having to come down. You can no longer be, I'm the top dog. There's only 3 places, essentially 2, where you can go to, which is AWS, Microsoft, and Google. Now that everyone's kind of offering the same sort of things, all those people are having to lower the prices in order to compete, saying, all right, I know you can go to AWS and get a very similar service, but what if I offered it for $5 less? And now Amazon saying, all right, what if I offered it for $7 less? And now your margins are starting to be played around with. What are your thoughts on Microsoft stock dropping? Again, 10% is a lot for a company that it was almost
$1 trillion company.
A $1 trillion company, yeah.
It's a race to the bottom, just kind of like internet service is slowly becoming to be. We are supposedly getting spectrum in our area here over the next few months. They have been laying fiber in the neighborhood, and that's what popped in my brain when you mentioned that. So I went and looked at some of their prices, and you get like a gig for $70, half a gig for $40. And sometimes when things get competitive, it's a race to the bottom, and you have to let something go. Whether it's customer service, whether it's quality of servers in this case, whether it's quality of network, whether it's some type of paywall limitation, like your cell phone company throttles your data after so much usage. But it will be a race to the bottom because people have figured out for now, let me say that differently. For now, they have figured out what they need, and they're going to go to the most inexpensive provider to get it. That's just what's going to happen. If Microsoft is that inexpensive provider, then Microsoft gets the business. If AWS is that most inexpensive provider, they get the business. Same for Google. And people don't care as much now what label is stuck on the product as much as does it do what I need it to do, and is it the most efficient and most cost effective. And Microsoft is going to have to figure out how to make their stuff appealing, how to make it cost effective, and most of all, how to make it easy to use. Because just like my buddy here, we listen to conferences like Build. We hear things like Fabric and, the programming lingo. I understand some of it. And hopefully most people in those audiences and watching, streaming like we are are understanding it as well. But if you were to come to me right now and say, what does Microsoft offer in AI? I'm gonna point right at Copilot and go, okay, they've got several products that integrate with Copilot, such as Office, Microsoft Designer, etc. But that's all I know about. I don't know how to use any of it. I don't know that I need it. Maybe I do, but I don't know about it. So I think we've all got to do better at making it more transparent, making it easier to understand. And Microsoft has got to say, hey, our product is best. This is why. And this is what it can do for you. And I think it's a combination of the overall AI problem, both consumer and business. AI, what is it? Go ask the average consumer what it is. It's a glorified search engine. Do you know how many times I have heard that? It's a glorified search engine. So why do I need it? I just go to Google. We've got to change the AI narrative for all this to work out.
I agree. One other thing that should be noted is that investors are also concerned about Microsoft's capital expenditures. They are exploding.
Yeah.
Microsoft is investing tens of billions per quarter for data centers, GPUs, energy infrastructure. As you know, they laid out this whole plan to kind of own data centers and be friends with the community. I see this as, and again, I think that's the largest part, is that Microsoft would be fine if it did what Apple was necessarily doing, where it just partnered with OpenAI and said, you do all the heavy lifting. You know, Apple's not investing in data centers necessarily. They're saying, Google, you've already done all that investment. Here's $30 to $80 billion. You know, keep doing whatever you need to, but you use your own money to do it. And we're just paying you to use your services. Microsoft is doing both. It's saying, here, OpenAI, build us something or keep building us something, and we'll build our own on top of that. And so it is, again, we've talked about the AI bubble, but I also see this as Satya Nadella's Ballmer moment. We don't talk about that. We talk about how great he's been for the company and how the stocks have rise and how it's a triple or $1 trillion company. But he's about to get into an area where it is going to be bubble or burst. And fortunately for Ballmer, he had a lot of small ones. He had a lot of misses. They are relatively small. Yeah, this is relatively small compared to this AI one. Microsoft invested $40 billion into its smartphone company. Probably even more than that by the time we're done with it. If we had to do everything, but it was $40 billion to buy the Lumia brand and bring it from Nokia and make smartphones. And it was a colossal bust. If we added up everything over the end of the time, it could have been $140 million $140 billion by the time everything was all said and done. And it was a huge failure for them. Big black mark for them as far as consumers are concerned. Microsoft invested, I think it was, 12 to 13 billion initially for OpenAI. They've already dedicated the next 80 billion over the next 2 years. They're also building data centers and infrastructure. I think by the time they're done with this, they'll have a much bigger hole if AI is the next Windows phone or just, whatever that next market is. Remember, Ballmer invested in the Zoom technology. That was a bust, but it was relatively small. And at the time, there was at least a need to compete for, small media players before the iPhone took off the way that it did. There were these small things that Ballmer failed at, but he tried to. And I think this is one big thing that's going to leave just as big a black eye, if not bigger, for him. So we'll see how he recovers if this does burst, or if he ends up being the savior, as everyone keeps hailing him to be. But it seems like with every new quarter report, we're starting to hear, we're starting to see the armor be chipped away at. Enough harping on him about that. We're going to move on to Meta, which is going to be laying off. I'm sure that, what is that, 1,000 workers?
1,000 people?
Yes, as it shuts down its VR. And VR was critical to its metaverse. Those of you who have been following us for a quick minute realize that we reported on the metaverse about, was that 2 years ago, 3 years ago, however long we've been calling Facebook Meta now. And they changed their entire branding for this. They went from Facebook to Meta because the metaverse was where it's at. So they'll probably change their name to AI by the summer because that's where they're moving to now. Meta laid off run. Yeah, AI book. There we go. Or Meta AI. Meta AI book. Face AI. There you go.
There you go.
The entire VR studios were shut down, I believe, starting last week or so, including Armature, known for its Resident Evil VR, Twisted Pixel, and Sanzura games. Supernatural, the VR fitness app Meta acquired, will stop receiving new content as a sign that Meta is deprioritizing the VR experiences. Meta is redirecting billions into AI, including its superintelligence research lab and its massive investments in Scale AI. Internal tensions are rising for former AI chief Yan Li Chun, publicly accused Meta of fabricating benchmark results for its Llama 4, suggesting deeper instability. So she's basically saying, like, hey, you're going to get rid of my stuff. I'm going to crap all over what you guys are doing when it comes to AI. You're lying about it in order to justify getting rid of me. This marks a dramatic reversal from 2021. Again, when we said that, Meta was where it's going to be at. We had these legless conference rooms that everyone was supposed to be hanging out in with their headsets. It seems like they don't want that anymore. Now they want you to get cooking recipes within an instant on Meta's new AI solutions. What are your thoughts? Because I've also seen Meta trying to incorporate AI into Messenger and WhatsApp and a bunch of other things. But what are your thoughts on this huge pivot, this acknowledgement that, hey, VR and potentially AR aren't where it's at right now. AI is the only place to be.
I'm not surprised by this. And, as somebody that has two Meta headsets, Meta headsets, sitting to my left, makes me think, because there are some of us out there, such as myself, that have used it for simulators, and I believe there is a place for VR in the simulation world, but it's not for everybody. It's a niche. You can't build a $1 trillion business off a niche. And I think Meta has figured that out. They're like, okay, people didn't buy into turn your office meeting into a bunch of avatars dancing on your screen that may or may not look like you. They didn't want to do that. They didn't want to go into this metaverse and be characters during the business day. Oh, well, some people are anyway, but we'll move on. But they didn't want to do that. They want to save that for after work. So we built these products over here that nobody wants. Okay, so what's your obvious pivot here? The pivot is obvious to me. AI is big. Yes, AI is where it's at. Oh, we don't need Meta over here anymore. But is AI really where it's at? Or is that what Meta is using to get rid of things that they said that's the way we were going? So this move is a big deal, but I think their next move is the truth teller. Do they actually pivot to something with AI and run with it? Or does this metaverse thing fall away and we never hear about it again? And, they're like, just use Meta AI on Facebook, please, or in your Ray-Ban smart glasses that we built. Look at these Ray-Ban smart glasses we built. Make sure you use it over there. And we just won't talk about this anymore. And I think that may be something we do.
It should be noted, too, at the bottom of this story, at the heart of this story, there's 1,000 people getting laid off. And I know it's easy for us to say 1,000, but if you stood in a crowd of 1,000 people, you'd realize that's a lot of people.
Yes.
That are going to be losing a job that specialized in something that they believed in, or at least knew that there was a paycheck for, and were sold that there was a future for this. So it's unfortunate to hear this story. Unfortunate that they were sold on, without any foresight, that no one had the foresight to be like, again, this is 3 years later, and we didn't even get anything really from the metaverse to begin with, other than a bunch of crap demos. So my heart goes out to those people who are losing their jobs. Hopefully they'll find something in the future, maybe in AI, and then they can lose their job in 5 years instead. But let's just keep them in our thoughts. Our last one is Call of Duty, and this one is for a job that should have been gone. This is Bobby Kotick's, essentially a Bobby Kotick story. And I don't know if I'm pronouncing I don't know if I'm pronouncing his name correctly. And if I'm not, who cares? I don't really care about this guy. The latest Call of Duty entry saw a 60% drop in sales. It's one of the steepest declines in franchise history. I've played the game back in the day. It's been a while since I played. But Bobby Kotick, now out of Activision, claims the collapse proves selling to Microsoft was the right move, essentially saying Activision couldn't have sustained itself alone. So he's inadvertently saying he saw this coming. I don't know what that means about him. Critics argue Kotick is rewriting history. Activision's stagnation happened under his leadership, and Microsoft now inherits the fallout. The decline raises questions about whether the annual release model is still viable. Franchise fatigue is real. Players are demanding innovation, not incremental updates. I think talked about the soft mics. I'll let you go on that in a second. Microsoft now faces a strategic decision to keep the yearly cadence or give the franchise room to reinvent itself. So maybe go 2 years without a game, 3 years, who knows? Game Pass integration could soften the blow, but it's also risk devaluing premium sales even further. So what do you think? First off, you play the game. Have you experienced this fatigue, and do you
Yes.
see why the 60% drop is in sales?
Absolutely see it. I have been streaming a lot over the last few weeks just as a distraction and to have something to do. And some friends have gotten back together with me over the last few weeks, and we've had a good time. We have been playing Call of Duty Black Ops 7 pretty much exclusively. We have tried some of the other genre type games, Ready or Not, Insurgency Sandstorm, but mainly Black Ops 7. And I didn't play much of Black Ops 6. I played it enough to get figured out. I did play quite a bit of Call of Duty Cold War, which was now 2 to 3 years ago. And we were talking about it. In fact, it was just last night of how some of these Call of Duty games could simply be an $25, $30 add-on, a DLC, if you will, for an existing game. Because the game doesn't feel or behave any different necessarily from one version to the other. Maybe, the maps change, the objectives move around. Maybe your character can jump across water. Maybe you swim underwater. But again, to your point, no innovation, no nothing new. No, hey, there's a tactical mode to this game. Go over here and play this multiplayer tactical mode, and you've got a completely different game than the running gun style just on a different map. People are tired of that style of game, whether it be Call of Duty, whether it be Madden 26, whether it be NBA 2K26. Well, all you did was change the rosters and change the uniforms. Why didn't you just make that an update 2K25? Oh, you want that 70 more bucks out of me, so you can just change the uniforms and change the way the court looks and the sponsors on the logo. So you charge me another 70 bucks. I can tell you, as somebody that games, that is alienating your players big time. And I think that is why you're seeing things go down. We're not seeing the innovation in the games. We're not seeing the options we used to see. It used to be you could buy a video game, and the next year you had better graphics to look forward to or new features that you knew were coming. We're tapped out on graphics, folks. We're at 4K. We're not at 4K 120 for every game, but our hardware, we're tapped out. And does a few frames on the screen make a difference for a lot of people? No. We've got to figure out what it is the new generation wants. And unfortunately, I don't think it's on a console. I think it's on a handheld. I think it's on a phone. I think it's on a tablet. Just walk around and see how people are interacting. Go to airports, see what's in their bag, see what they're carrying with them on vacation. That is how they're consuming their content. That is how they're getting their free time. That's what we've got to build around. It may not be the Xbox console and the Call of Duty game. Maybe you need to build around Call of Duty Mobile. Maybe that needs to be a better game. Maybe that needs to be more of a realistic style game. That may be a place to go, but I don't think these games right now are going down the right road for what gamers want.
Yeah, couldn't have said it better. I don't know if there's a solution to this. This has been kind of
I
laid at
don't either.
Microsoft's feet. I mean, I say laid at. They bought it. They knew what they were getting into. They've seen the numbers. They're gonna have to figure out a solution or take another black hit when it comes, or black eye when it comes to their brand in gaming. I think if I had to, spitball some ideas, I think extending these things onto second screens. I know that this Call of Duty mobile, but it's plays separate entirely from the Call of Duty game.
Yeah.
And I don't think people want to. And again, there are people who want to do shooters on the phone, but I think reinventing the idea of what you do with your phone that extends the gameplay from your console or from your handheld would be a benefit. If this is like kind of like what they did, where Pokemon Go is a real world kind of mapping situation where you're interacting while you're being mobile. Perhaps you do that. You add some aspects of the game that involve your phone in where you're at in the environment you're at. So if you're, say you were playing Call of Duty, now you got to go catch a flight and you're at the airport. There are things that you can do that will go back to your achievements, go back into your game that you're playing on your console or on your handheld, but that are being done perhaps at the airport, perhaps at major landmarks, perhaps at just areas and, something of that nature that will say, hey, the reason why I'm paying 60, $70 is because not only do I play the single player or multiplayer on my console, at my game station, on my handheld, but when I'm on mobile, when I'm on a tablet, perhaps even on a TV, whatever, I also get additional things that I don't necessarily have to pay extra for, but add to the experience. I don't know. Thinking outside the box here. Well, ideally, there are some gamers who are still employed at the company who are thinking the same thing. We'll see what they come up with. But the idea that Bobby Kotick was saying that it's going to take Microsoft to keep us afloat, and now that they haven't bought, the sales aren't reflecting any of that. Like they didn't increase it. Just because they have more money doesn't mean they have better ideas. We're gonna have to see. They're gonna have to prove, like, hey, this purchase is justified. Maybe again they move from a yearly to 2 years or something like that, while they maintain its presence on Game Pass, and you can play it, in the off years for cheaper until they come up with something truly inventive and new. Maybe they couldn't do that with the current Activision the way that they had it set. So maybe that's their saving grace. Maybe that'll buy them some time, but